Hello and welcome back to the Mind Your Business with AI podcast. So I'm joined here with Juan Hernandez, who is the head of AI at Sales Factory. So Juan, there's so much new stuff that you're working on. I guess first let's just kind of start off with who are you?
So I work at Sales Factory, and this is my second stint actually in the company. The first time I joined the company, it was in 2011, and basically what I did back then is brought the marketing research practice in-house. I left after about 6 years, did my own thing for 3 years, came back about 2 years ago to
Gotcha.
do kind of the same thing, but now with AI. So really what I'm trying to do is taking the Cell Factory mode, which is consumer insights, right? That's what Cell Factory does better than most agencies. So it was thinking the main goal was to, okay, how can we take that competitive advantage, that mode, and turn it into something that we can leverage with AI. So that's where we started kind of deploying apps or agents that use consumer insights to do what we call or deliver what we call marketing agility, which is the ability to let you learn about a problem and make decisions faster and action on them faster.
Gotcha.
Because I think, we can talk about that later, but I think there's a big issue with the traditional approach with marketing research right now.
Very cool. So if I'm understanding this correctly, because we had coffee, I think, 2, 3 weeks ago?
Something like that.
So Sales Factory is sitting on 40 years of market research data?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, Cell Factory's been in business since the 80s.
Okay.
And, started by George King, and then
Yeah.
Jed now is the CEO. He took it over about 20 years ago, or even more. So Jed is also an engineer by training. So he was thinking about, okay, how can we,
Like the systems behind everything?
and put data behind the creative work that we do.
Gotcha.
So he started doing that. And so, I mean, if you think about from the consumer insights point of view, we have, decades of knowledge there that we can leverage.
Well, insights come from data, right? Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, because you guys, tell me a little bit more about like how is this data structured? Like, is it a 5-question? Like, are you asking specific demographics? So is it like, a white lady that lives in Georgia that lives in this type of zip code, her thoughts on pottery, or how does all that? How do you structure that? That sounds like such a disparate kind of data source.
So I think we went geek really fast, and I can, I'll try not to go too technical, but there's multiple ways you can do it, right? You can have an agent that has a code interpreter features and actually can do the analysis for you. So
Gotcha.
that's one way. The other way is you can just load up like written reports. And again, it depends on how you structure your agent, your architecture, and use, vector databases, which are kind of semantic search solutions
Right.
that allow you to find that information too. So, and there's multiple ways. What we've done to make it more accessible and easier to use is our whole agent's solutions are built on what is called a RAG, retrieval augmented
Right.
generation pattern. And the cool thing about it is it's built on vector databases. So really, you can load up images, text. I mean, it can be PDFs, Word docs, anything you can think of really. And it will process those documents and turn into chunk of documents. And again, you can configure depending on the performance, but you can think about it, it's going to be half-page chunks of documents. And so,
Those are your insights, right?
that's
Yeah.
basically every time you ask a question, you search in database, and it uses those chunks of documents to answer your question.
Gotcha. I guess to not geek out too hard, the interface is kind of like a chat GPT, right?
Yeah.
And then the person who's using it is a marketing person that's looking for research.
Yeah.
So they go to the platform and say, hey, I want to understand, I don't know, the pottery market in Georgia. And then the AI agent goes in, looks through this huge database and pulls out all of the relevant information and then says, here's the insights.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, wow.
Yeah, because to me is, to the point is, it's like you're giving your marketing team members a librarian, a marketer, and an analyst. And what I mean by that, because, if you ask, create me a marketing plan, right? You can get insights about the target audience. You can get insights about what's the best template to create one, right? Or you can you would actually need to like crunch a number to get like a unique insight to, to drive your whole marketing plan. So that's a benefit of this sort of solutions where, you're making your team members way more effective, way more productive.
Well, then also too, like when we were talking over coffee a few weeks back, you were talking about the typical market research process. It's like, well, they got to get. It takes 6 weeks for them to put together an RFP, then another 6 weeks to send the RFP out, another 6 weeks to review it.
Exactly.
And then that's all of a sudden 3 months. And then you're working with an agency, and you've got the analyst that, responds to your emails and has to do their own analysis and might have to send an email back for clarification, to where all of this is just right there at their fingertips, and they just have access to that data.
I mean, to me, it's like, to me, it's funny also, like sometimes we set a standard for the LLMs that we don't set for ourselves, right? Like,
say more. What do you mean?
Well, so like, like you say, sometimes like the LLM gets it right 80% of the time.
Right.
But what percent of the time a human gets it right? Is it 50? So what's the problem with 80?
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, that's an abstract, right? But just to give you an idea, or to give you a specific example.
Yeah.
When going back to your traditional approach of marketing research, right?
Yeah.
If you're in a big company, you have a question, you put out the RFP, you get responded, then you start working with the vendor, and again, a quarter goes by, you get it back. And we think that data is, I'm in business of it, right? I did that for a lot of years. We think that data is 100% accurate, but it's not, because we're sampling the population, right? The only way to be 100% accurate is you have to go out and talk to all the consumers in your category. And nobody's going to do that. Yeah, it's not feasible. So there's always a margin of error, right?
Yeah. So what's like the appropriate confidence interval for market research?
I mean,
in school they teach what? I'm 95% sure that this is right.
Yeah. So what you want to do is basically, roughly speaking, your surveys, you want to be at least have 100% completes. 300 people, 300 completes at least.
Yeah.
That gives you, depending on how big your category is and all of that, that gives you something between 5-8% margin of error.
Okay.
Which, is a lot, but it's not, you're going to be right in the ballpark. So that's my point. Like, when you do research, you think you're 100% right. You're never 100% right.
Right. Well, yeah, it's funny because the analogy I've kind of usually with my students is like, it's almost, analytics is kind of like you're looking at a crystal ball, but it's not 100% clear. It's like maybe stats are like, 85 or 90% opacity. So it's like you can kind of see the big objects, but you're not going to be able to get like 100% pure results.
I mean, even with analytics, right? Let's say you're looking at your CRM data. Mm-hmm. Some clients, some customers may have missing data, so you have to take them out, right?
Right, yeah.
Some of your data might be not standardized, so you have to manipulate that, and that can create some errors, right? So even in the case where the data you have, like 100% of your population data, there's always a margin of error.
That's true.
So, but, again, and the example I give you is like, think about the Waymo cars, the taxi cars.
Yeah.
Right? There was a big deal because I think GM had a similar brand, I thought it was called Cruise, and it was an accident and somebody got killed. But those cars were on the streets for months. And there was one accident, and it was a terrible accident because I think the car drove back and forth on side of the...
Like on top of somebody?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That sounds like an egregious...
It is, but how many taxis accidents were during the same period of time.
Right. So a lot of it's like PR optics. Like, how does this look?
Again, different standards, right?
Yeah.
A machine-driven car cannot crash, cannot kill anybody, but humans, that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess my first kind of thought when thinking about the difference in like, what is acceptable error rate with machine learning and then people is that people can't scale like AI can. So like maybe that's what's kind of giving people some uncertainty around that of just, yeah, but if you've got that 20% mistake margin, but then all of a sudden you've scaled that up to 100,000 instances, like that seems kind of like anxiety inducing from like the end user's perspective.
Yeah, and kind of to piggyback on your idea, so here's to me where the opportunity is for us. It's a trade-off.
Right.
Right? You want to be fast or you want to be precise, right? Those are kind of two competing goals. So
right.
what is the sweet spot? So going back to what we're talking about, you want to take 3 months, a quarter, to be 90% right?
Right.
Or are you comfortable with being 70% right?
But you have it now.
But be done in a week.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because multiply that by every critical decision you do in your business. Let's say you do 3 or 4 of them in a year, right? So you only can do 4 of them in a business for your traditional approach because it takes a quarter for each of them.
Yeah.
If it takes a month, right, using the AI agents, then you can do 12. So imagine how much behind you're falling if you use this new approach versus a...
Well, framing it up in a different way is it better to have 70% accuracy on everything or only get 25% done at 95% and then 75% you have 0? So like, yeah, I kind of see the trade-off there of like just... And also too, I think that, being on the surface, like, hey, this is how accurate this is. And like at least engaging with that dialogue, I think is really, really important, kind of setting the tone. Because we had Joey on the podcast recently, and he was talking about it's not an immaterial thing to parse out what is hype and then what is like the actual state, what is actually boots on the ground. And it sounds like you guys are there. Like you're actually building something that has a practical application. It's not just almost like the Startup Valley ethos, just throwing a bunch of money at something that's like pre-revenue. Like they're pre-revenue, so they can be valued at whatever they want.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, I think what has helped us is one, I don't know, principle, tenet, core value, call it whatever you want, and that I learned back in college. And this is a story. We had a project, I am a computer engineer, so we have to deliver this program that analyzed logic expressions.
Okay.
I mean, that's basically you have a bunch of letters with different operators, and you have to put zeros and ones and figure out what's the answer if it's true or false.
Gotcha.
But so, you have 20 letters, right?
Yeah.
That's, since every letter can take 2 values, the combination of that is 2 to the 20th or whatever. So it's a lot of combination, right, to figure out all the possible outcomes. So anyway, we were looking at, the goal there was to use recursive functions to solve that issue. And, even though that was part of the requirements, when I saw it, to me, it's like, I can just go and find the deepest parenthesis in the equation, solve that, reduce the equation, and repeat that process until there is nothing else to solve, right?
Yeah.
As simple as that. So it's just like, okay, solve the deepest parenthesis, rewrite the equation, and again, look for the deepest parenthesis again, and just keep doing it until you have one number left, right? So
Gotcha.
I did it like that, which was, plain programming, if you will.
Yeah.
Everybody else in my class did the recursive calls. And, I'm old, So back in the day, we use what is it, 486 PCs. The clones that you have to build yourself, like they had like 512 cow RAM
I mean,
memory.
you're outside of my kind of pale of understanding.
Yeah, but I mean, it was like, the memory. Right
Yeah.
now you have like 8 MB.
Yeah.
Back then, when I went to college, it was like 500 Ks.
Wow.
So not even a megabyte of memory. So they were having all sort of issues because you have to.
So they just didn't have the compute power to
Yeah,
like
back then
run
we
these.
don't have to run the recursive program. So anyway, that taught me that sometimes we in the technology, we want to use the latest and greatest just because it's available to us, not
Right.
because it's the best solution.
Right.
So, again, that's a core principle of self-factory AI. Like, I don't talk about fine-tuning, machine learning, deep learning, any of that, because at first, I think the models are gonna become so great so fast that we're gonna reach what is called the artificial general intelligence (AGI).
Yeah, I've heard that.
So, when we get there, fine tuning is not gonna be needed. So to work around that, that's why we went the route of the RAG, which is okay. Let's just provide context, so the answers we get are unique and are more specific.
Yeah, they're
and
relevant.
And we mitigate the risk of hallucinations, right?
Gotcha.
So that's kind of one of the core principles of ours, to kind of go back to what you're saying, like, keep it simple, make it more accessible, and more affordable for the matter.
Very cool. All right, so you mentioned back in college. So can we get kind of like your Batman origin story? Like what have you been up to? Kind of like why are you where you are now?
Okay, I mean, I would say, I'm a strategic kind of mind. I would like to say, I plan my career and everything is being.
But that's not life.
No. So I graduated from college and went to, I'm from Venice, from San Cristobal, which is a small kind of Greensboro-like
Oh, yeah.
city. So
Really?
it's like, but then I went to Caracas, which is a big metro capital of Venezuela. And I started doing my internship there. They offered me a job. My first job ended up in a little town, in an oil rig in the middle of nowhere,
Really?
just programming systems to monitor the oil extraction process and all of that. Then I did that for a few years, and then I started working at MobileNet, which is a telecommunication provider back in Venezuela. At that moment, it was actually Verizon subsidiaries. Verizon had like 49% of the shares.
Okay.
And I was just supporting, again, nothing to do to what I did earlier. I was supporting the voicemail and the SMS services of servers. So I went from programming to just kind of managing operating services and applications. And again, the main reason, believe it or not, I got that job, it was because the manager liked to play soccer, and I ended up playing with him soccer, and we became buddies, and so buddies. And when opportunity came,
That's cool.
I did a decent job in the interview process and all that, but they hired me. So, but my last role in MobileNet was product owner or product manager of the SMS service.
Right. So that's kind of like similar to the role you're in now, right? Like you're kind of like the AI. Well, is that fair? Are you an AI product manager? Is that kind of an interesting or relevant framing?
It's similar, for sure.
Okay.
In the agile, software dev terminology, I'm a product owner, because what I see is, like I said, the mission, the vision for the project, and think about what are the features, how we wanted to bring them alive. So it's similar. The product manager is more like a marketing role, where you think about, okay, from the user point of view, are we satisfying? Is the service good enough?
Right.
Are we making money? What other services we need to bring to the table, and that sort of thing. So it's similar, but the role that I'm in right now is more technical.
Okay.
The other one is more marketing. So anyway, but when I was product manager, I was thinking, like, I like this marketing thing, but I don't know anything about it. So I probably need to get some education
Yeah.
to be decent. And that's why I came to Wake Forest to get my MBA.
Gotcha. Did you get an MBA with a concentration in marketing or?
Yeah, marketing. So my initial goal, again, think about like chances. So my initial goal was to get an MBA on marketing and IT, because I'm thinking I already know IT.
That seems like an interesting pairing.
Yeah,
Because usually I think of them as
I mean, I'm talking about
opposite ends of the org chart.
2009 at that time, right? So
Okay, so IT was
that's where
I graduated high school in '08.
Well,
So-
well, that's where Facebook was becoming popular and stuff like that, right? I mean,
Right, yeah.
all these
well,
Meta.
I remember there was one kid who got Facebook at our high school, and he was the cool kid.
Yeah.
Because that was like early on.
So my thought was, if I can figure this marketing thing with my IT background, I can probably do some damage on digital marketing.
Right.
Right.
That's a really great kind of way of thinking about kind of long term.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people are very reactive in their career. Like they just kind of they work their job, and then if they get approached with a promotion, they may or may not go for it.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you were like starting to look ahead.
But here's the sad part, right? I was thinking, okay, this is a vision. This is how I see it working. But then when the second year, when we finish the second year, we have to like kind of
Do like a dissertation or something?
no, apply for the elective,
okay.
like the IT elective and all
Yeah.
that, because like the first year, it's your core courses, so you don't. The second year is when you kind of choose your
And you start to
specializations.
differentiate, yeah.
Yeah. So turns out that there was only like 5 of us interested in the IT classes, so they didn't offer any IT classes in my MBA.
Oh, really? But why did you need the IT classes though? Because I mean, hadn't you worked 10 years in IT?
Well, that's the beauty of it, right? That
Right.
Then they opened a, and by the way, the same thing. I skipped this, but if you ask me why I choose my degree on undergraduate is informatic engineering,
Mm-hmm.
and the reason why I enrolled that because the year that I graduated from college, the university in my hometown opened that career, and thinking that sounds good. It's a new career. I'm gonna do it. That was as much as.
Well, I mean, you were a high school kid.
Yeah.
Like you're thinking about like the future is 2 weeks from now, not like 10, 15, 30 years.
I don't think you even know what the future is.
Right. You're like a different person. When I was that age, I was a different person every 2 to 3 weeks. So I was like, this is my new identity.
So anyway, again, just by chance, IT wasn't an option for me anymore. And they say, well, we're going to launch this concentration on analytics. I said, well,
2009 in analytics, because I got into analytics back in like 2016. Well, 2015 was when I enrolled in the MBA and got a concentration in analytics. So like I graduated in 2017. So yeah, you were like
so I did,
8 years ahead of me on that.
I did the analytics then, market and analytics, which again, best even for me because then now I had the marketing, the analytics, and the IT.
Yeah.
So thinking like, okay, now I'm going to get any marketing job I can get, and that was not the case. But again, by chance, one of my professors said, I work with this company, Sales Factory, and they're looking for somebody to run the marketing research department. I'm thinking, because my goal at the moment is I want to do marketing strategy, whatever marketing strategy is.
Mm-hmm.
But my thought is, nobody's going to hire me to do marketing strategy without any marketing experience whatsoever, right? So I'm thinking, okay, if I become an expert on consumers, maybe that can be a good path. So that's where.
So that's kind of how you ended up at Sales Factory. I mean, I'm actually glad that I had you on a podcast because this kind of detailed, like you talking about like your history, it kind of fills in a lot of gaps. I'm like, okay, I understand like why you think about the problems you do and like the framing, because it's very different than I'm more on like, I guess because you're teaching now at Wake Forest.
Yes.
So like we're kind of similar in that way, the analytics stuff, but then I'm more kind of on like the learning, being published on LinkedIn and content, running the podcast on like the content creation side of things. So, okay. Because one thing I wish I would love if I had your IT background and like understanding the structures. Because a lot of that stuff, like, I mean, when we were grabbing coffee 2 weeks ago, you started getting like super into the like mechanisms of like how all this stuff works, and I'm like, oh, I don't even know where to begin. And I guess a question I have for you, for those of you who are listening who are trying to break into AI, how relevant is all of the underlying structure for it? Like, would you advise someone like me to go learn the basics of it, or learn like an intermediate or advanced level, or should I just focus on the use cases and kind of trust that there are people like you out in the world building the products?
That's a good question.
It's a question I'm actively trying to work through myself,
Yeah.
because I have a lot of friends that are technical like you, and I'm like,
I mean,
it's daunting.
because even so, here's my 2 cents. I think one thing that has benefited me a lot in my career is what you were mentioning. Like, I've been on the marketing side, I've been on the IT side, so I can bridge the gap. So when somebody talks about IT, I'm able to understand.
Right.
But also, I can, when somebody's talking about marketing needs, I understand how that is important. So I'm able to navigate the two waters.
You're kind of like a steward between the two
Yeah.
departments.
So for that reason, I think it's important to know both the technical side. But, again, even though I've been working on AI for 2 years, I haven't wrote a line of code in the last 6 months. 8
Really?
months. Yeah. Well, I have used Claude a lot to write code for me, which is different, right?
Okay, so is that vibe coding? Is that what that's called?
I don't know what.
You've never heard of vibe coding?
No.
So it's funny because I was talking to Kurt, who's like my other kind of friend that's in this space, that he's built multiple startups around AI. Even back in like 2016, 2017, when it was like early stages. So he was like early on that stuff. But he was saying that like he is very skeptical of that exact thing that you're doing. Like,
Just as I know,
yeah.
one of the electives I took in college back in the 2000s, like 2000 on 2001, I took one elective that was called neural networks.
Okay, so you like understand. So it's not vibe coding with you because like you understand the code. Do you?
Well, I mean, it was an elective that I took, over 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So I know the basics of how it works, but I mean, I cannot build a basic neural network, or I cannot describe how it works today. But
Gotcha.
My point was, like people say, I got early into AI because I got in 5 years ago. I started working 5 years ago. This technology existed, 25 years ago. It's just been evolving very slowly. And the issue was that there wasn't a friendly user interface to use it.
Right.
That was, people think that ChatGPT is the best because of how good it is. You can see now that there's a bunch of modules that
they're Gemini, good. Claude, like all these.
The great thing about ChatGPT is that it created an interface for anybody to interact with the model.
Right.
Right, because you think about ChatGPT and you think that's the model. No, ChatGPT is the interface. GPT 4.0 or 1 or 3, those are the models. So really, ChatGPT is what allows you to type something and get an answer back.
So it's like a GUI. It's like it's kind of like Power BI or Tableau. Like I mean that's actually kind of
same thing with Tableau, right? Tableau. The big thing about Tableau is it made visualization accessible for most people. It's just
point and click, yeah.
Right. Before that, if you wanted to create dashboard like that, I mean, you have to program them. I mean, you could do something decent in Excel, but nothing.
it's so Excel is so clunky compared. Like Tableau just feels like it's so smooth and streamlined and like smart.
So again,
it's sophisticated.
That's my analogy right there. That it made it popular because most people could use it. So that's why 3 years ago, whatever it was, when GPT 3.0 that it was even had decent answers, and that's where it
Gotcha.
exploded.
Well, that's kind of relevant for one of the questions we wanted to tackle today was what are the exciting like new developments in the AI space that you're seeing?
And again, it's just maybe too technical, but a couple of weeks ago, I went to Atlanta to the Microsoft AI tour. And, again, the great thing is you hear all these Microsoft engineers talking about what they're doing on AI,
Yeah.
what sort of services they have available for developers and for businesses like ours. You start hearing about standardization already, because right now, you can develop using many different libraries.
It's like the Wild West right now, it feels
Yeah.
like.
So now,
It's like a new frontier.
now they're coming with this protocol called the Model Context Protocol, MCP,
Okay.
which is supposed to kind of organize that chaos. So it's
So-
going to be a protocol. You define a server, you define a client. So
Okay.
the server has all the tools, and the server is kind of your agent, but it works like a server. So you have like a server
Gotcha.
that works like an agent, and then you have a bunch of tools available to that server. But then you have your client, which is going to be your applications.
Okay, I've seen this I was watching a YouTube video on, I think it was like Make or N8N, where, yeah, it's like you have the Google suite, and it's like one point of contact. It's almost like a manager AI agent. Is that kind of a good interpretation of that?
Yeah.
And then you have this Google Manager, and then you have Calendar, you have Sheets, you have PowerPoint, you have, and now, speaking of new things, have you played around with Google Video yet? Like the new AI generated Google Vid?
No, I play with Flash 2 a lot, but no.
I'm starting to use that on this channel now to like very quickly record content on Copilot.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little clunky. Like I'm using it. Instead of using DaVinci, like I would usually like a very detailed editing tool. I'm trying to adopt the new like technologies into my workflow. You can literally do like a prompt of, hey, create me a podcast trailer, and that's it. And then it'll go and like it'll give you kind of what theme do you want, and then just hit generate, and it'll have like an intro
So
that's
you load
animated.
up the video, of the entire podcast video, and then say create a trailer for it.
Well, no, I'm saying this is literally, I go to new.vids, type that in, and it'll give me a prompt and say, hey, what kind of video do you want to make?
Okay.
I could type in, I want to make a sales training video.
Okay, got it.
And then it could just, and that's like a good example of poor prompt engineering, but like a more sophisticated thing you could do is, hey, I want to create a sales training video. Here's the relevant document. You just do @ and then you can point it to where you want in your drive and say, here's the training program. And then it'll pull it, and it's got transitions. It'll pull like videos and templates. I mean, it's shockingly good for those who are like brand new to doing any type of content creation. It's a little bit, I've been doing content creation probably for 8 years now, so it's a little bit frustrating for me, but I'm trying to put on kind of that beginner's mind of like, that's an innovation that seems very practical that I think is actually going to get traction.
And would you say frustrating because it's not like as good as you want it to be?
It's trade-offs. Like you're talking about the accuracy versus speed trade-off in your space. With Google, it limits the suite of things you can pull in to like it's almost like they do Pareto analysis. Like 80% of people want these 3 widgets. So it limits that, and then it's just much less customizable. But that being said, you can generate content just at light speed if you really, or maybe not even at light speed. Like if you're a company, like I'm sure you guys have internal training videos. Like you could just use a prompt to have that generate, double check it to make sure it's like somewhat accurate, or there might be some like awkward stuff in there, and you can quickly trim that. But it's almost like, have you ever used slides in the Google interface?
Yeah.
So it's the kind of the same methodology. Like you can click and drag and like move things in, but it's with video too, which is really, really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I told our HR manager to use a notebook LLM. Have you?
Oh yeah, you were the one who told me about that.
Yeah, because you can load up all your
It's huge.
HR documentation there, have a podcast about it, and
Well, that's the first thing I did. So I took my old podcast, uploaded the top 5 most popular videos, and then had Notebook LLM record a recap podcast. And it's interesting about that in that it's very realistic. But then if you try to do multiple podcasts, it's kind of the same thing over and over and over again. Like it doesn't feel, and that, maybe that's just my experience of it so far. But it feels like it's kind of the same. Like, oh, hello, oh, that's interesting. It's just the same kind of repeating thing. But I mean, I gave them no instruction on like, here's the co-host, here's her backstory, like, and then
Yeah.
fill that in. So it's like, I guess that's probably to be expected at this point. So, what any other new kind of developments you've been keeping your eye on?
I mean, to me, I'm really interested about the next phase because if you think about LLMs, the first phase was scale.
Okay.
Right? We went from hundreds of millions of parameters to billions. I think we are in the trillions now, which makes huge. But then scarcity is one of the scarcity and necessity or laziness are kind of the mothers of innovation, right?
Right.
So now the Chinese figured out how to make smaller motors even as powerful as bigger models. So
Interesting.
now to me is, I mean, like if you look at the DeepSeek models, which are, amazed everybody a few months ago. If you think about it, those are tiny models compared to the, OpenAIs, the
Yeah.
Googles. So once when I say they, Google and OpenAI figured out how to do the reinforce, I will forget, reinforce training. There's a couple more words there, but like I said, I don't like using jargon and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
having people actually training the models to provide feedback, reinforced learning, that's what the LP, something like that.
Yeah.
So then those models, imagine if a small model was able to perform as good as the big models. You start with a big model, and you do the reinforcement training on top of that. To me, that's where maybe we're gonna reach AGI, in the next couple of years instead of 5 years on the road, when most people are saying. So
I'm afraid to even speculate about the future right now because it seems it's so overwhelming.
when
Like,
somebody said about they know what's gonna happen with AI, even 2 months on the road, I'm saying like you don't know what to talk about because
Yeah.
nobody knows it.
Okay, speaking of the future, this is actually really relevant. So we're here on campus at Greensboro College. I teach analytics. Is your tool going to essentially replace all the marketing analysts out there?
Now, again, not really, because I do believe, and there's a lot of studies out there that show the productivity of course human by themselves,
Right.
AI by themselves, and both together.
Yeah.
When you put both together, there's no comparison. That's the best combination. And something that I always talked about is I took the Strength Finder test.
Clifton Strength Finders. Yeah.
One of my top strengths is ideation. And I mean, these names are kind of weird because ideation, what that means is all this time we talk about, I've been, millions of ideas. I have thought about a bunch of ideas
Or just kind of flowing in. Yeah.
flowing in. So that's really it. It's not about like I am good at just coming up with new ideas. What that means is when I started bouncing ideas with somebody else, that incentives or sparks my creativity. So
Gotcha. Okay.
to me, what happened is now I have something that I can chat with every time I want.
Right.
So my creativity now is through the roof because I'm always like using prompts and stuff like that that gives me more ideas. So I just always iterating on my ideas all the time. So, I don't need to meet with people to bounce those ideas anymore, to bother people with,
Yeah.
my geek ideas. I can just start like rough out those things by myself. Now, when I show those ideas to an actual human, then they're,
It's almost like you've already had a few conversations about the topic, so
Yes.
it's a lot more developed.
yes.
Yeah. So it's
So-
almost like you're augmenting your work life.
Yeah. So I think, again, that's what works for me.
Yeah.
For different people, it's going to be different. But I think that combination right there
Right.
is going to make you, I don't think it's going to replace it. Maybe what's going to happen is, instead of 3 people, you would only need 1 because that person can produce 5 times as much.
See, this is what kind of the conversation I've been having with my analytics friends is that we've noticed a huge compression in the analytics market, and I think a lot of that was driven by the guy making $600,000 at Google. That job went away. Now he's taking a job making $500,000. So there's like downward pressure, and also with the advent of AI, you get that $500,000 analyst access to AI, and it's almost like he can have the same output as like 20 junior analysts. And that really makes entering the space a whole lot harder. But at the same time, like that's a technology focused industry versus like, if it's here in Greensboro, it's heavy manufacturing based. They're probably not going to have that type of analyst in their organization. Like that doesn't seem like it would kind of mesh there.
At the end, I think if you're good at thinking,
Mm-hmm.
you always gonna have a job. If you're complacent and you're good if your job is about doing the same task, similar task over and over and over,
Yeah.
then that's where
Then you're primed to be replaced by AI.
that's where I think is so. If you're proactive and you always try to add value,
Yeah.
I think you will be safe for the most part. But that definitely,
So is it like
it's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. For sure.
well, what's coming to mind is curiosity. I feel like a lot of people are not curious about their job. Like they just want to get a paycheck, do the minimal amount of effort possible, and then go home as soon as possible.
Exactly.
So like, yeah, that's an interesting concept.
Just to give you an idea or a context, we were talking about Venezuelan situation, off camera before we started this conversation, but what that happened or what that meant to me growing up in Venezuela, with all this disruption happening, is I got very comfortable with uncertainty and with the scarcity of resources.
Interesting. Okay.
So, I don't complain about, not having all the tools I want or somebody changing the goal in the middle of a project, because that's what
You're
I
kind
grew
of
up
used
with.
to like,
It's not
that's some chaos.
it's not necessarily because somebody's doing their job wrong. It's just the nature of life, if you will. And of course, COVID, AI is doing that to us right now. So I think that's the main thing for people that they need to think about. That is, and that's also another thing. One of my professors on the MBA, strategy professor, said, all the stuff, to use a nice word, right? Not to use other word, that you learn here is not gonna be worth it, because the classes they're teaching is like in a rule-based sort of scenario, right?
So you're kind of getting into like the foundations of economic theory.
Yeah, but
All things held stable.
Yeah. It's like one thing I don't understand, when I work at Reynolds and Amazon, we spend from September to November doing planning, right? Planning out the next year.
The next year, yeah.
What are by February next year, there was no trace of that plan because everything changed.
Yeah. That tracks.
So, and companies don't think about that being wasteful. They just do it over and over again. And they try to forecast sales next month. and they try to
Yeah.
again think about all these rules based that everything's gonna be like it was. And I don't know. I mean, I think that's just wasteful, and that's maybe what AI can help us with. Is just understand that you gotta be strategic, but holding yourself accountable to meeting one number or thinking that this number is gonna happen in the next month.
Yeah. I mean, I think in their defense, I think they're just trying to kind of rally the forces and have like a North Star. Because I don't know what a world would look like if FP&A doesn't exist, and they're just kind of like winging everything.
Well, no, I'm not saying winging it, but is it worth it to think about that you can plan out an entire year,
Oh yeah.
right?
Well, it's frustrating too. Like when you're working on a team and then you don't hit that goal, and then nobody gets their bonuses. Like that's frustrating for everybody involved.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, maybe the president just announced huge tariffs, and it's like, you guys did everything right. Except this curveball. How are you to anticipate that?
Yeah. I mean, imagine right now, because I'm sure this is happening. You know, big companies made the plans end of last year.
Yeah.
Now, a month ago, 2 months ago, they started hearing, okay, we got to prepare for this tariff stuff. So they made a plan to
Kind of weather the storm.
proactively
Yeah.
prepare for that thing, right? And let's say they assume it was 50% of tariffs. Now you're maybe 200% tariff or 125 tariff,
Yeah.
right? So somebody's making plans for 200 tariff, 100 tariff. And I mean, think about all the waste that goes into that process.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
I'm not saying you have to wing it. You can be prepared, but you don't have to figure out all the details. Back to your point, you need to set up a goal and a strategy
and then
and
push
just
forward.
and
Yeah.
move forward. I mean, you need to check if your strategy is still valid based on what's going on. But thinking about that, you're gonna hit this point, or have a certain sales levels at this point. It's just same trying to figure out what's gonna happen with AI in 2 months.
Yeah. It's just not.
I mean,
It's just not going to happen.
if you wanna take a shot at it, good for you. But I'm sure it's not gonna happen. Whatever you come up
Gotcha.
with.
All right. So Juan, where can people learn more about Sales Factory AI?
So I would love to say here's a website. We are in the process of building all of that. But I mean, I'm on LinkedIn.
Okay. So they need to connect with you.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Right now, we are. They can connect with me through LinkedIn or Sales Factory, and we'll talk. Again, it's kind of, I'm embarrassed to say that we don't have any marketing done yet, even though I'm working in a marketing agency. But I put
You
my
guys are
head
in
down.
kind of in the ideation, like
Yeah.
you're kind of almost like you're incubating it, right? Because
Exactly.
like you're
put my
getting it
head
out in
down.
front. Because I mean, you're in a cherished position in that you guys have a pretty big client base, so you can kind of
Yeah.
roll that out to whoever's most interested, and then get that feedback before
Yeah.
you fully launch.
Yeah. So that's what we've done is put our head down to have a product that we feel is good enough, that is up to our standards. Then we're in the trial processes with some of the agency clients. And, once we feel like we have got a good feedback, or whether there's any feedback that we got from them, then
Right.
we're going to achieve quickly and make the marketing happening and make sure that people can find us and all of that.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, it's kind of cool that I get to talk to you like while you're so early in this process. Well, I mean, it's early, but not, because you've been working on this for what, 2 years at this point?
Yeah.
So like, that's a big investment right there. Especially, it's not just you; it's all the AIs that you're working with too. Like you're having these. I'm picturing like your workday, and it's like a mad scientist just like playing with all these different AI tools.
Yeah, just to give you an idea, we do the agile, so I have 2 live projects right now. So it's daily one-on-one project, daily of the second one, and then meeting with the developers and the Scrum Master to, figure out the questions, technical questions, and the project questions. And then, yeah,
Gosh, well, Juan,
whatever time I had left, I spend with the students and family and stuff like that.
that's awesome. Well, Juan, thank you so much for coming on. It sounds super exciting what you guys are working on.
Yeah, no, thank you. It was fun. I always have fun talking about AI stuff.